going to do the community member share. And then we're going to have our Safe Streets for All discussion. And then we were supposed to have a legislative kind of middle of the session update, but Miranda wasn't able to join us last minute. So in lieu of that, we'll be sharing out the link to our WFRC bill tracker. And so you can kind of follow along where we're at. And then she is still planning to come at the after session is done and kind of do a wrap up and give an update from that. And then we'll have an open discussion with the transportation partners here. So if anyone has questions for us, which is kind of a open discussion question time for that. And then we'll have the open discussion for our committee members to share any upcoming events happening, and then we'll be done. So it might be a shorter meeting than most. And then another item is the food is still coming. It's a little delayed, so apologies for that. But we'll get through a couple presentations, and then once we're done with whatever presentation it gets delivered in, then we'll take a little break and we can get food then. So thanks for your patience on that. But with that, let's go to introductions. Rosie, do you want to start us off? And we'll go around the table and then I'll move to online.
Rosie Hernandez, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Kip Billings, Wasatch Front Regional Council. I'm here in connection with the safety study.
Wayne Benyon, also with the Regional Council and also in connection with the safety study.
Curtis Herring, Executive Director of the Utah Transit Riders Union.
Mike Christensen, Executive Director of the Utah Rail Passengers Association and also a member of the Salt Lake City Planning Commission.
Good evening, Stephen Richardson, Ogden resident, as well as Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Office of the President, Weber State, and Director of Policy for the General Counsel's Office at Weber State.
I'm Lauren Victor, Transportation Planner at the Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Seamus Gueda, Transportation Planner at Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Brayden Pease, Salt Lake City resident.
Kendall Willardson, Transportation Planner with Mountain Land Association of Governments.
Olivia Vaughn, Strategic Planner with UTA.
My pronouns are they, them, UTA.
Hey everyone, Megan Waters, Community Engagement at UTA.
I'm Maria Vyas. I'm with Fair and Peers, and I'm here to talk with you about the Safety Action Plan.
Jay Aguilar at Utah Department of Transportation, Long Range Planning.
Nate Curry, the new Communications Manager at WFRC.
Okay, and then we'll move to online. We'll go Angelo and then Andrew.
Hi, Angelo Papastamas with UDOT Planning, Travel Ice and Move Utah Programs.
Hi, everybody. Andrew Riggle, Public Policy Advocate with the Disability Law Center.
Then we'll go Tara and then Carolyn.
$118 billion bipartisan security funding package that includes
Carolyn Hoskins, resident, former planning commissioner for Salt Lake City.
Kara Rollins, Utah Housing Coalition.
The only reason the border is not secure is Donald Trump.
And then we'll go to Sandra and then Jeremy.
Hello, I'm Sandra, and I am a community member of Salt Lake.
Hi, Jeremy Shinoda, Ogden resident, Ogden Planning.
And then we'll go to Toya and Tashelle. Okay. Did I miss anyone? Okay, and our food did just come in. So let's go to our committee member share and then we'll take a
Tashelle put her intro in the chat.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
And Tashelle Wright, Project Success Coalition Community Health Worker.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move to our community member share, and Andrew has agreed to share a little bit about himself.
Hi, everybody. Again, Andrew Riggle with the Public Policy Advocate for the Disability Law Center. And for those who haven't figured it out already, public policy advocate is just a fancy way of saying lobbyist. But I was asked to share a little bit about the DLC tonight, and I'm very happy to do so because the work that I do is only a very small, very small part of what the team at the DLC does. So the Disability Law Center was founded in 1978. There is an agency like ours in every state and territory because we are mandated to exist by Congress because some of you around the table may remember when Geraldo Rivera was an actual journalist. And in the mid-70s, he did some undercover reporting at an institution in Massachusetts called Willowbrook. It was an institution for people with disabilities. And the conditions they uncovered there were absolutely horrendous, and so much so that that a couple folks in Congress got involved and decided that they never wanted to see conditions like that or hear stories like that again. So they created a network of protection and advocacy agencies across the country and for people with disabilities, and the DLC is Utah's protection and advocacy agency. Our mission is to advance and enforce the legal rights, choices, and opportunities of all Utahns with disabilities. We serve folks regardless of what their disability or condition may be, as long as the issue that they are contacting us about is in some way related to their condition or disability. Our services are available statewide, free of charge, and regardless of residency status. And we have about our intake folks get about 4,000 requests for assistance each year, and if we are not able to help the person directly for some reason, we always try to give them additional resources or refer them to other organizations in the community who may be able to assist them with their issue. We always try to resolve issues at the lowest level possible. And that a lot of the time that means just simply providing information to individuals about their rights and about the processes available to them to enforce their rights and how to use those processes to do that. In cases where there needs to be more, it's going to take more than just self-advocacy to get a resolution. Our team of advocates and attorneys will get involved and try to negotiate or negotiate or mediate a solution between our client and the organization or agency or institution that they're trying to access. And when that doesn't work, if we think that there is a strong enough legal question at stake and the facts of the individual circumstances are strong enough, we are a law firm and we can and do take both individual and systemic class action cases to court when that is the only option left available to us to obtain a satisfactory resolution. The other thing that makes us unique in this space, other than being a law firm and being able to go to court, is that Congress gave us unique authority to be able to go in and monitor programs or facilities where people with disabilities receive services or reside. So this can include things like group homes, nursing homes, the state hospital, the state prison, county jails. So and a whole but and also private facilities that receive that serve Utahns with disabilities, and so that's kind of how we do our work. And so now I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what the areas that our folks actually work in. We do. I'll get this out of the way first because it is probably it is the one outlier, and it is also probably the area that is most closely related to the work that we are all doing, or that we are all collaborating with WFRC around, and that is our fair housing team. It is the only program within the DLC that is able to work with individuals who do not have disabilities. Our fair housing folks can work with any of the 6 federally protected classes, and using non-federal money, we can also work with folks who may be protected and facing potential discrimination under the Utah Fair Housing Act as well. And fair housing is consistently becoming one of the most requested services that we offer, as you might imagine, in this economy, as the supply of affordable and accessible housing, whether or not you have a disability, is nowhere near meeting the demand. So that's fair housing. Our access and rights team primarily handles our ADA enforcement, our Americans with Disabilities enforcement work. So if somebody that you are interacting with is having difficulty accessing a place of public accommodation or a private business, we may be able to help them address that. The access and rights team also handles our voting work to make sure that voters with disabilities in Utah are able to exercise their right to vote privately and independently. And they are also, when we do have issues related to transportation, it would be the access and rights folks that you would be interacting with on transportation related issues as well. Our community integration team is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, and their objective is to work with people who reside in facilities and wish to transition to the community, to help them try to access the services and supports that they need to do that, and also to make sure that folks with disabilities who are in the community have access to the services and supports that they need to be able to remain in the community and not have to fall back to nursing homes or other facilities because there aren't adequate supports and services to help them live as independently as possible in the community. And then our employment team, works with folks who are experiencing discrimination on the job because related to their disability, and that work tends to look like helping them request reasonable accommodations and negotiate those with the employer. And if that process doesn't yield a positive result, they quite frequently go to the EEOC and file complaints there. Our education team is primarily focused on special education, and the goal of special education is to provide the student, a K through 12 student with a disability, with the supports and services that they need to be in the least restrictive environment possible within the school. And for us, that often means advocating that a student get the supports and services that they need to be able to be in the general education classroom with regular education students as much as possible. And that advocacy usually looks like working with a student's parents or family to negotiate with the school, with the student's individualized education program team, or with the school district to get the student the supports and services that they need. If that doesn't work, they often will file complaints with the Utah State Board of Education, and even occasionally go to court. One of the cases that we are in court at the moment with is a case with Salt Lake City School District for segregating students with significant disabilities in entirely separate schools from their peers in their neighborhood schools. So and then let's see, then we have I think that might be all of the, oh, and then our intake team, which are the folks that when folks call us or reach us through our online request for assistance on our website. Our intake team, our short-term assistance team, is the group of folks that they will get on the other end of the phone, and we don't always succeed at this, but we pride ourselves on making sure that folks are able to talk to a real human being on the other end of the line, and if they if that is not able to get their call right at the moment, if you leave a message with us, you will get a call back from somebody on the intake team to follow up on your question and get you pointed in the right direction or get you started in the process to talk with one of our advocates or attorneys. Oh, and then I should mention we do have a representative payee team. They are a very specialized team. It's through a contract with Social Security, and their whole purpose is to make sure that Social Security beneficiaries, those who are receiving SSI or SSDI benefits, and have a representative payee, somebody who is responsible for receiving their Social Security money for them and making sure that money is spent on their behalf and for their needs. The team's job is to go in and conduct regular reviews of representative payees to make sure that the payee is doing everything properly and meeting and actually using the beneficiary's money to meet their needs. So, oh, and then we have I knew I forgot one. And then we have our abuse and neglect team. They primarily they have in the past they've been focused on work in jails and prisons and making sure that offenders with disabilities have access to all the parts of the facility that they need, all the programs that they can participate in, and also making sure that they have access to appropriate and adequate medical and mental health care while inside. And lately, you may have seen within the last year or two several stories on youth residential treatment facilities and our work there to make sure that the young people who find themselves in those programs or facilities are safe and healthy. And a lot of that work has been done by the abuse and neglect team. And finally, we have the work that I and my partner Nate Krippis do on the policy side, and besides bothering the legislature this time of year, which is a lot of what we do. We also work with we also try to have regular communication with our federal delegation, as well as working on the local level with counties and cities. And a lot of our policy work lately has been focused on mental health and making sure that because the conversation around mental health lately has been focused primarily on crisis response and suicide prevention, and all of that is absolutely necessary, and we fully support that. The question that we have continually asked over the last several years is what happens and what is available to a person after the crisis has passed, after they have stabilized. Where do they go and what do they do to prevent or minimize the next crisis? What supports or services do we have available to them then? And it feels like we have been saying the same thing over and banging our heads against the wall for about the last 5 or 6 years, saying the same thing. But this year, we have had a couple people who have been very active and very influential in this space, tell us in various ways that they have started to get it, and have, as one said, have finally started to drink the Kool-Aid. So we're taking that as a win. And the reason that we do the policy work in addition to the individual client work is that we feel like we could continue to do the same thing and win the same case 100 times over and make that difference for those 100 people. But if we are successful in getting the policy underlying those choices and decisions to begin with, if we're successful in changing that, then we don't have to do those 100 individual cases, because we can change it for 1,000 or 10,000 people at a time rather than one at a time. So that really is the impetus behind the systemic and the policy work. And because everybody always asks us, it's something that they're interested in. We have about 85% or so of our funding is federal funding. The rest is contributions and grants. I think I'll stop there and see if there are any questions, because I know I've thrown a lot at you. Oh, I should also say, for anybody that is interested or has somebody that they think could benefit from talking with us about a need that they have, our website is disabilitylawcenter.org, and it's all one word. And I apologize for not knowing the transportation piece as well as I would like. But if anybody is interested in seeing what Nate and I have been up to at the legislature during the session, we have our policy page, which there's a banner to the right side of the homepage that you can click on to go directly there and see our budget and bill tracker, and also all of the things that we've said publicly so far during the session about various bills. And also we do weekly video updates that we call the policy corner. So if you are a true glutton for punishment, you can go back and check those out, or catch up with us at the end of this week or the beginning of next week for the latest episode. So with that, I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And we'll be sure to share any links that you have, especially you mentioned a website. We'll make sure that those are shared out with our follow-up email this week.
Great.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
This is Tara. I just want to thank Andrew for sharing, and I'm just wondering, you never came up for a breath of air, so I don't think I've ever heard you talk so straight. I mean, it was, I was kind of laughing, I'm like, whoa, he's going for it. So thank you. Actually learned a bunch, and I know this agency, so I appreciate what you're doing. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Tara. I appreciate that.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna have Maria talk about the Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan. So we'll plan to come back at 6:10, so about 3 minutes. Yeah. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Can y'all hear me? Yeah, okay. So my name is Maria Vyas, and I am here to talk with you about the comprehensive safety action plan that's being prepared for WFRC. And just to give you an overview of what I'm talking about today, I'll give you a sense of what the plan is going to achieve. We're going to talk a little bit about how we're addressing equity concerns within the plan. We're going to talk about some specific recommendations and then kind of next steps. And so in the room, please just shout out if you have questions, and then Lauren, can you let me know? I'm assuming someone can see if questions come up online, but please feel free to interrupt me. I hate to hear myself talk.
Hey, Maria, sorry. Can you pull the microphone a little bit closer?
Yes.
You can also bend the top if that's helpful.
It's like right in my face.
Oh,
there we go. Okay,
that's
that's better. That's better. Okay, so just to give you an overview of what the Safety Action Plan is all about. So WFRC and actually all the other MPOs in the state are preparing these safety action plans. It's kind of resulting from a pool of federal funding that has become available for all these regions and local governments to put together plans for strategic roadway safety improvements. And I'll get a little bit more into the details of what that means. But basically, because WFRC is putting together this plan that encompasses the whole area for all the cities that are within WFRC's jurisdiction, it means that all of those jurisdictions are going to be eligible for federal funding from the SS4A program, which I'm going to talk about in a minute here. Okay, so the Safe Streets and Systems or Roads for All SS4A program is a new program that was established a few years ago as part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Lots of syllables there. And this is a discretionary grant program, meaning that communities can apply for it and perhaps hopefully get funding. $5 billion over 5 years. So we're in the middle of the cycle. We're expecting a new notice of funding opportunity to come out in February for the 2024 cycle. At some point in February, we don't know quite yet, but when. But there's two different kinds of grants that communities can get out of this program. One set is called the planning and demonstration grants. So for example, the safety action plan that WFRC is doing is funded by a planning grant, just for kind of general, area-wide planning activities. The demonstration grants can be specific to a corridor, but they're more like pilot projects, quick build projects, things that you can do with like signage and striping, doesn't require a whole big impact to the roadway or the right-of-way. So those are the planning and demonstration grants. There are also implementation grants being given out. Those are for kind of larger scale projects that require a little bit more investment, more right-of-way, more impact, et cetera. So the federal SS4A program has requirements for what safety action plans that are funded by that program need to include. So there's a couple of things that are absolutely must-haves. So the safety analysis makes sense. It's a safety plan, needs to have safety data. So looking at trends, existing conditions, past trends, looking systematically throughout the region for where are the places where there is the most occurrence of crashes, what kind of crashes, who's being affected by these crashes, systemic needs. So like, for example, in our region, we have, I think you've probably all observed, we have a problem with red light running. That is not specific to a location, that is systemic. That is an issue for all of us. So identifying some of those systemic needs, and then identifying throughout the region where are there places that are higher risk due to a variety of factors. So safety analysis required. And then we are also required to identify projects, strategies to address those safety issues that have been identified. And then there's 6 more things of which we only have to do 4, but we're going to do all 6. So these are leadership commitment. Basically, that means that an agency like WFRC makes some kind of a public statement, like a regional safety resolution that says that we're committed to trying to get to 0 fatalities in some dedicated timeline. Plan development, what that means for us is that we have a steering committee composed of folks from different cities throughout the region that have helped us kind of guide where we want to go with the plan, provide feedback on ideas, tell us what they do or don't like about what we are putting together. Development activities, this basically just means public outreach. We've done outreach to several communities, the different elected staff officials at a lot of the cities. We did a regional safety launch that was open to the public. Equity, so this is part of the federal requirements, so addressing equity from a data-driven perspective, addressing policies and plans, so to what degree local plans ordinances, active transportation plans, transportation master plans, address safety policies from a few different topics related to safety, and then progress, like just monitoring how well are we doing in implementing these projects and actually achieving safety improvements, crash reductions. Before I blather on more about data, any questions about what the SS4A safety action plan is supposed to be about or kind of about the program? Jay?
Are you working with all of the MPOs?
Please use your microphone.
Are you working with all of the MPOs or just Wasatch Front?
Do you mean as part of this project or our firm personally?
Your
Because those
firm.
are two, we're working with 3 of the 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, turn
On
your mic
mine,
on.
Andrew.
I was, I was just wondering, it sounds like this is primarily, primarily traffic safety. I was wondering if there is, a pedestrian component to it as well.
There absolutely is. Let me have you hang tight on that, and then once I get through the rest of the presentation, I can see what other questions you might have related to that. But yes, absolutely. Other questions? Okay, let's talk about data for a minute. So these statistics are specific to the WFRC region, and this is just the last 5 years for which data was available. So these are annual fatalities that have happened in WFRC's area starting in 2018. You can see that the trend line is increasing. This is generally true across the country as well. There just is an increasing trend of crashes and fatalities that we are trying to get a good handle on. In terms of crashes by crash type, so towards the left end of the screen, you can see the more common types of crashes. So for example, left turns at intersections have 778 suspected serious injuries, that's the blue color, and 65 fatal crashes, that's the orange color on top. Roadway departure is the second most common crash by crash type, so that just means somebody drove off the side of the road, whether that's they drove into a ditch, they drove into a median, they drove into the sidewalk and they hit someone, encompasses all of those kinds of things. And then Andrew, kind of to your point, active transportation was the 3rd most common type of crash with a little over 600 incidences of active transportation users being affected by that. And that's just within the last 5 years within WFRC's region. So when we break it down by what we call vulnerable user, which is pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists, you can see the degree to which they're making up the percentages of all fatalities and suspected serious injuries. So over on the right, motorcyclists are making up a little over 700 of those crashes and representing about 22% of all fatalities and injuries, or serious injuries. Pedestrians are representing a little over 600 of those injuries, and bicyclists are a little bit less at about 165-ish.
Maria?
Question?
Was this just Wasatch Front or is it statewide?
That was just Wasatch Front.
Okay, and does that track nationally? That breakdown kind of
I don't know.
for all those
Good
types?
question.
Okay.
Any other questions on the data before I move on to the next one? Which I may or may not be able to answer. Questions online, anything? Okay. So let's talk about how we are addressing vulnerable communities as part of this work. So as I mentioned before, addressing equity is part of the required, was one of the requirements for the safety action plan. So our strategy for this was to develop what we're calling a local equity index, which sounds fancy, but it's basically just a map that shows the entire area and the places where people who are experiencing a lot of transportation disadvantages are located, concentrated, and the degree to which they are experiencing those transportation disadvantages. It's not just a question of on or off, it's a question of how bad are these people really struggling to meet their transportation needs on a range of factors. And these are the factors that we were looking at. So these are all based on Census Bureau data, people over 65, people under 18, communities of color, also including people that have limited English capabilities, lower income folks, people without a car, people with disabilities, and then people living in crowded households, which is just a little bit of a newer criteria that we've seen. Basically, it is asking how many households have people where there is someone living in every room except for the kitchen or the bathroom. So if there's somebody living in your living room, that gets counted. If there's somebody living in your, your basement rec room or whatever those might be, your spare office, all of those people get counted. So we can see what is the degree to which people are maybe unable to afford housing and are kind of doubling up on households. So when we start to pull all these factors together geographically, this is kind of what it looks like. So towards the darker end of the color spectrum, that dark red, that's where we're seeing really the most transportation disadvantaged populations. And so this is based on census tract. That's the 20%, I'm going to say worst, most disadvantaged groups of folks in that dark red. So you can see in the kind of Davis-Weber area, Ogden has a lot of those. High, like most disadvantaged census tracts. There's some around Clearfield. Once you get into the Salt Lake Valley, you've got some at Magna, Kearns, Taylorsville, West Valley, Salt Lake City, obviously west side of Salt Lake City, mostly some bit of South Salt Lake. So those are areas that kind of really stood out to us as places where people are really struggling a lot to meet their daily transportation needs. So this is where it comes into the decision-making process. So as part of the work that we're doing, we have developed what we're calling a high-risk network for the entire street network within WFRC's boundary that shows where are crashes happening most severely and most frequently, right? So really, where is the greatest risk? You're more likely to experience a crash and it's more likely to be severe. Where do those overlay with communities that are high equity priority communities based on that kind of that dark red color that you saw on the previous screen? So we've got some maps that show where those locations are, and I actually believe they're on the website, so you can kind of peruse this yourself once we release you from this meeting. But what our project is doing is developing, is it 180, guys, locations for the project cut sheets? I don't know off the top of my head. It's like 180 or so different project recommendations throughout WFRC's area. So throughout all the cities, I think every city more or less has at least one, probably more like 2 or 3, where we're saying, okay, on this corridor, from point A to point B, you have these kinds of safety problems, and we recommend these kind of safety solutions. So for example, this is showing Monroe Boulevard in Ogden, which is in one of the high equity priority areas, that dark red 20%. And it's a place where we're recommending intersection improvements like maybe roundabouts, traffic calming, maybe some lane restrictions, and other kind of measures to help address the factors that are happening on there. So for each one of those 180 or so projects, we'll be making these kinds of recommendations and tagging, is it in a high equity priority area or not? It's important to tag that because the communities that then want to move forward and apply for SS4A implementation grants would want to flag that. That is something that the people that are making those funding decisions at USDOT are paying attention to. Is it in an equity area or not? Just extra consideration given to projects coming from those communities. Any questions on this part of the analysis before moving forward? Mike.
I am interested to know whether the data on fatalities and suspected serious injuries is coded by facility type, whether it's a highway versus an arterial versus a local street.
Great question. So it is, and if you go to the website, you will see it broken down by state routes, federal aid, urban routes, which is a local route that gets federal funding, and then local routes. And the reason why it's broken out like that is because for the SS4A program, state governments are not eligible to apply. You can apply for funding that's on state routes, but the funding application needs to come from a local government entity or other, like a university or a city or whatever can apply. So it was important to note the distinction, but yes, in the database, otherwise it also notes what's the functional classification of the roadway. Other questions on the equity part of this? Okay. So let's talk about the types of things that we're proposing to help address some of the questions or issues that are raising. So part of the whole SS4A program is based around what's called the safe system approach. And for those of us working in the safety space, this represents a bit of a paradigm shift. So in the past, we kind of designed more, roadways for mobility and assumed that people that were driving around were going to act safely and responsibly and make the best choices for everyone around them. That's a nice idea. However, I think we've recognized as a global community that people make mistakes. Sometimes they're distracted, sometimes they're worried about something else, sometimes they're not paying attention, sometimes they're taking things they shouldn't be taking, whatever. They're gonna make mistakes, and that we need to start designing our roadway networks and our transportation systems so that we're accounting for those mistakes and we're reducing the impact that those mistakes have on vulnerable people. So that's the whole gist of this sort of the SS4E program and the safe systems approach. And it's the sort of philosophy behind a lot of the work that we're doing. These 5 things, safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, post-crash care are all components of that safe system approach, just acknowledging there's a lot of different ways we can come at this. We can try to design our roads more safely. We can have better coordination with our emergency responders and our healthcare providers so that hopefully if people do end up in an accident, they have a better health outcome and that we're tracking those outcomes. We can have different speed policies for how we design our roads, set our speed limits, enforce speed. There's a lot of different ways to crack this. So we are recommending strategies for these 180 something whatever projects based on a set of proven countermeasures, things that have been observed over time empirically to actually make a substantial change in crash frequencies at these locations. So on the slides here, if you can, I don't know if you guys can see this very well on the screens, but there's an acronym there that says CRF. That means crash reduction factor. That's the percentage by which, if you implement these types of treatments, you will reduce crashes by that amount. So this is just a sampling of things, and Andrew, I think maybe this will start to get at some of the things that you were asking about. A sampling, so rectangular rapid flashing beacon, these are they're not the hawk beacons with the red, they're the ones that have like the fast flashing lights, the yellow lights that you'll see at crosswalks that are more at pedestrian level, they're not overhead. And so what that does is it brings your eye more to the pedestrian level, and then the flashing light is a little bit alarming, so it grabs your attention a little bit better. Pedestrian refuge islands, those are just spaces in the median of the roadway that are protected, whether those are landscaped or just concrete spaces, but places where people can wait if they can't cross the street in one stretch. A road diet, that can mean either reducing the number of lanes, just so you have fewer lanes of cars moving about, or it can also mean actually physically bringing the roadway footprint in. So there's just physically less space for people to have to cross if they're trying to cross. Permissive lefts to protected. So permissive lefts means like if you're trying to make a left turn and you just have like a green ball, right? You got a green circle, or sometimes you have a yellow flashing arrow. And as soon as you get an opportunity, you can go. You are not prevented from turning based on whether or not there's somebody in the crosswalk, right? The protected is the green arrow. So you only get a green arrow if it's not conflicting with other movements, including people in the crosswalk. So having that protected left eliminates that conflict if you're turning left and there's somebody trying to make that movement in the crosswalk. Just some more examples, and I promise this is the last slide of me blathering on too much. A leading pedestrian interval, that is something that you probably have seen maybe in Salt Lake City recently. If you're a pedestrian, it means that when it's your turn to cross the street, you actually get a little bit of a head start. The cars have to wait a little bit before they're given the green light to go, so it makes pedestrians a little bit more visible when they're in the crosswalk and reduces conflicts, particularly with cars that are trying to turn right. Radar speed feedback sign, you guys have probably seen these telling you that you're going too fast. New sidewalk, pretty self-explanatory, but it's really common in a lot of the areas in our region that there's no sidewalk on only one side of the road, and we need it on both. People need to go on both sides of the road. And then just simply intersection or street scale lighting, so that the lighting is focused on where the people are, making them more visible, in addition to or instead of the high utility pole lighting. So I wanted to kind of stop and hear from you all a bit and see, do these strategies resonate with you? What have you seen be effective in your own communities? Have you had barriers trying to implement safety projects or improvements in your communities? Yeah.
I was going to ask about your study design, or, in your research, did you observe or did you consider new residents moving from areas, or did they give their input, moved from areas that have the best practices based on research? And maybe those individuals, based on where they're coming from, or they don't have such good safety mechanisms in place that lead to crashes in places that do. So who were all around the table to give this feedback before you came up with the safety action plan?
So we have done some public outreach and feedback like to the broader community. We haven't gotten anything back specifically yet about things that people have seen in other regions that they think were valuable. However, our team, we're two firms that are based all throughout the United States. And so we are bringing feedback from our counterparts in Florida, Minnesota, Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington that have done this before. This is work that's relatively new to this region. And so we have been leaning pretty hard on folks that have developed more of these countermeasures elsewhere. On top of, there's actually some good national databases. So there's the FHWA Proven Safety Countermeasures database. That's one. There's another one that's specifically pedestrian and bicycle safety countermeasures that I think is also FHWA. I'd be happy to share them with you and maybe just largely with this group.
Right.
I will say when we release our final document, we will have links to lots and lots of different resources that are best policy and best practice type documents. But yeah, we are drawing from that.
Great. And my final point is I'm finding not just red lights, but I'm sure everyone experienced the yellow lights. So when the person who wants to turn left, they've been waiting to turn and they're anticipating you're going to obey the yellow light from your, oncoming traffic, and you don't stop for the impending red light. And so that almost causes a crash because they're saying you should stop because I see the yellow light from my side and I'm ready to turn. I've seen that happen a lot. So I'm not sure if that's in your research some way, because again, it comes to user, right? It's like user, the driver, but there are people going through the yellow lights because they say it's yellow. I just slow down, but I'm going to keep going. You can't force me to stop. And then the other person is turning thinking that you're going to stop, and there's a crash.
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah, I do. Yes, thank you so much for this work. I loved the points that you had as well. I think moving here to Utah, also things that I have noticed and saw are those dang street lines that are not reflective. Like are really hard to find and see, especially in like storms and at night. Maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know. But that's one thing that I've noticed. I do appreciate the idea of having more lights at night. I think that's not just like, oh, I would love to be able to see things, but also safety things when like walking at night in downtown or walking through my city streets, just like safety in general, and sidewalks. Sidewalks are just great to have.
Just such a simple thing.
Yeah, whether that's kids riding bikes or me walking my dog, that's just the safety issue. So yes, I do love the ideas that you have suggested of sidewalks, the lights, but also like if we could just get some reflective paint on the streets, I'd
I'm
appreciate
so
that.
glad you mentioned that because there is something specific. So, okay, I'm going to get all jargony on you for a minute. So there is something called the MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which most municipalities and DOTs go by. And it's sort of like the rule book for like, what does a crosswalk look like? What does a sign look like? So that we're all sort of working from the same set of rules. And they just released a new version of that that establishes new retroreflectivity standards. So basically it's the pavement striping. It's how bright is the pavement striping in different kind of scenarios. So they're establishing actually new brightness standards. And I could try to tell you what it's like the lux per candle per blah, blah, blah. It's in here somewhere in my notes. I'm not an engineer. I'll try to find it later. But they're establishing new standards for that to actually improve that issue. So good observation.
And then we'll go quickly online to Andrew, and then after Andrew to Tara.
An experience this may be unique to me among this group because because I'm in a wheelchair, so it can be difficult for me to reach reach the walk buttons and push the walk buttons. And in the past, um when the light turns green, I could most often uh, assume that the walk signal was going to go with the light without most of the time having to press the button. That does not seem to be the case um, in a lot of places any longer, which is a little frightening for me. Another thing I've noticed recently, which is even a little more concerning, is that not only do walk signals not turn automatically anymore, but a lot of the lights are flashing yellow lights now. So as a pedestrian, I find it difficult to judge when it's safe to go and when I should go, because there isn't a clear there doesn't seem to be a clear indication for pedestrians that any longer that it is safe to go unless you are able to consistently press the walk signal button.
That is
So
a great point, Andrew. I had
yeah.
not thought of that, but that is an excellent point.
So yeah, I don't know who else runs into that, but I've noticed it lately, and it scares me a bit.
Those are all excellent recommendations, Andrew, and I think we'd be happy to work those into the report. Was there another?
Yeah, and then Tara.
I just have a couple. I agree with the lines, and I appreciate your explanation, but part of the problem too is when they're on the highway and they're being moved so often because of construction. And it's really difficult, especially when the 215 loop on the east side was happening, and the I-80. I hated going that way because of it, just because I didn't know where the lane was sometimes. But I just think that we need to do a better job at that. One of the things that I think, working with leaders is snow removal, because it forces people to walk out in the street. I live right off from Fort Union, and in a school zone, next street over is a school, and our people don't shovel. And so it's very dangerous to, go out into the street. And the other issue is that the plow, I kind of understand because the plows are coming and it's like cement afterwards. And so the snow removal really needs to happen. And then curb cuts as well. I'm surprised Andrew didn't mention that, but we still do not have curb cuts everywhere. And yeah, those are my comments. But I'm excited about this. I think it looks like you guys are really starting to, I mean, not starting, but getting in touch with communities and what their needs are.
Thanks, Tara. And I want to point out, I have seen some work that Jem has done doing some research about transit agencies elsewhere and their snow removal policies. I don't know, do you want to speak at all about what you've learned or some of the things you've seen there?
At the moment, as far as specifics, but I'm happy to send over examples that have come out of that research.
Okay. I mean, just to give a quick synopsis of what I've seen of what Jem was putting together, that some agencies actually prioritize snow removal in locations where there is a near transit or near, known activities that have a lot of ADA kind of needs for it. But I'm probably saying that wrong. But prioritizing based on like the vulnerability of the user, making sure that those places are cleared first. I know Angelo, I can see Angelo's hand is up, and Kip, I think you have something to add as well. Let's go, Angelo, Kip.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond a little bit to Andrew's comments. And so I too use a wheelchair and a walker, Andrew. And so excuse me, Mark Taylor from our Signal division is really looking at some innovative things, okay? And we are starting to really implement audible pedestrian crossings in a lot of places. And then he's also developing an app. It's in beta testing right now, where you won't have to push the button. It'll be available to all disability folks and senior citizens, everyone that needs extra time to cross, okay? And that's in beta testing right now, and he's working with Federal Highway on that. So yeah, he's a great resource. If you don't know him, Andrew Mark Taylor, and I'd be happy to put you in contact with him.
That's a great addition. Thank you, Angelo. Kip, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, there was a comment about the pavement striping and also about snow removal, and there's a connection between the two. Snow plows are really good at taking the snow off the road. They're also very good at peeling paint right off the pavement. So that's in a four-season area like Utah, that's an ongoing challenge. One strategy that might be included in our toolbox of safety strategies is put in recessed striping, where you actually grind the pavement and then you put down some adhesive reflective tape that will last longer, but it's below the surface, so it's not going to get peeled off by the plows. But that definitely helps, and it is a challenge to keep those roads marked clearly.
Really is. Other questions or comments or suggestions or barriers?
I just gotta ask, did traffic cams come up in the discussion at some point? Because I know those can be controversial, but
Traffic cams, meaning like
police enforcement of traffic
yes,
issues.
yes. We have tried to be careful about where we're suggesting such things to be sensitive to equity communities. So yes. Yeah. Any other questions or concerns?
I have a question, Maria. And I don't know if this came up in your conversations too, but it was just a thought that I had, that Utah removed safety inspections for vehicles, and I wasn't sure if that had come up as a contributing factor potentially to like unsafe vehicles on the roads.
Not yet, but that's a great point. We can add some discussion about that. Anything else?
Okay, I'm gonna
Go.
be quiet after this.
No, you're fine.
So I'm just thinking, as for strategies, you know how Waze operates when you're driving on
Yep.
the road and you
Yep.
report? Does this plan include a way that citizens can report those incidents as they see them at those high volume intersections or something that may not result in an accident, but it was, a bare miss of an accident or something like Andrew was talking about, that he can click on an app or something and report immediately real-time data, and hopefully just putting something out there in the hands of,
Sure.
people.
I know that there are big data technologies that actually capture that. I'm not actually sure how they work. And I think there are not, to my knowledge, there are not a lot of communities that are using that yet. It's sort of a newer technology. But there is something out there that helps capture that near miss thing, because that's can be just as important. That could have been a collision. You were nodding like you knew something. That means that now you're the target.
No, I think it's a really good idea to be able to try and crowdsource that type of data. It's expensive to develop an app specifically, just regionally, and it may be worthwhile, working with Google and Waze to even pilot something. I mean, that down the road about this. My question on this as well. 4 years ago, my grandparents were killed in a car accident exactly like you were describing on Christmas Eve. As they were turning left, they got hit by a kid doing 80 miles an hour down an arterial road. And police know that street in particular is a problem for speeding. And the question that I have is how much has law enforcement been engaged with this process, and is where they know that problem areas is enforcement part of a strategy, or is it they've been kind of we're looking at more infrastructure, urban design strategies instead?
It's been both. So they've been engaged at a couple different levels. We've invited, folks from different city departments to be part of the, we're calling them the geographic focus area meetings. So we've had them all throughout the Wasatch Front to talk about sort of needs and opportunities, issues, and we're going to be going back to them starting, well, I guess this month, next week. We start next week, going back out to them. On top of that, we have folks from more regional / statewide law enforcement agencies participating in our regional stakeholder group. I think it's also worth noting a couple of things, though. So the MUTCD book that I referred to before, the new version of it has different recommendations for how to set speed limits. So the past standard practice, which as a planner I find a little bit appalling, was that the speed limit got set at whatever 85% of people were driving. Yeah, right. So if everybody's speeding, we're going to be, at the 85th percentile level of whatever those people are driving, regardless of the context. What the MUTCD has done has said, you need to take into account safety, the context, the land use, the road use type, lots of different factors when you make decisions about speed limits so that we're not just automatically plugging in that 85th percentile. And UDOT apparently is going to be adopting that same policy as well. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to play out locally, because it's been, just go as fast as people are driving, and then if they drive faster, you move the speed limit up. Yeah, sure. And I'm sorry about your grandparents. That's terrible. Did I answer your question? Did it get answered? Okay. Okay. Anything else?
I have a question going off of what you were saying. Have you guys looked or like found a lot about traffic calming solutions? Obviously, it's not an infrastructure that can be set up everywhere. But I've even noticed driving like residential spaces where is single line or single lane, double yellow line. Like if I'm going the speed limit, people are often crossing the double line, speeding up, like getting in front of me. And so I haven't noticed that as much in like other neighborhoods that might have traffic bumps or anything like that. But like what other traffic calming infrastructure have you kind of found effective?
Yeah, that is a great question. And yes, traffic calming strategies are a big part of this. And so I'm showing you just like the quickest little eight pictures that I managed to get on a slide. But there are I want to say like 100 different countermeasures that we are, compiling into this toolbox, many of which are traffic calming. So that was Sandra, right? Is that who was talking?
Yeah.
Okay. So like pedestrian refuge islands, road diets, to some degree, the RRFBs, those are all traffic calming strategies. Also things like lane narrowing. So like the standard practice for a long time has been 12-foot lanes. And I think many transportation agencies will tell you in some contexts that's still appropriate, but many are going down to 11-foot, 10.5-foot, sometimes 10-foot. I've seen 9-foot in other areas. I think that would be a little bit of stretch around here, but you can definitely constrain those spaces more to create a more it's sort of like a psychological trick. People think that there is less space, they feel like they need to drive slower. And to your point about well, we call them speed humps, I think at this point is the terminology, or there's speed humps, there's speed lumps, we're always calling them something different. But things that actually deflect, vertical deflection of people's vehicles are effective at making them slow down. You can modify them so emergency vehicles can get through. There's also things that are called like chicanes or neck downs that at different points can actually constrain a roadway. Like if it's 2 lanes, you can constrain it down to 1 if that's the appropriate, neighborhood context for it. You wouldn't do that on like a big street, but like a little neighborhood street, you could do that. Slows people down. Salt Lake City's done it in a bunch of places. So yes, absolutely. I think there are many things in the toolbox, and I would be happy to share some of those. They're all going to be in the safety action plan when we get it published. There'll be a toolbox that maybe that's the most effective place for you guys to see these at that point. So maybe like a stay tuned for when we get the draft out for you to review. Other questions? Okay, so kind of just to wrap up, this is the website, wfrcsafetyplan.org. where you can see a lot of the work that I've summarized here. You can see the maps, you can see a whole lot more technical information about crashes, critical crash rates, composite indices, just so much more than you would ever possibly want to see. But you could go real deep on this. So I encourage you to take a look at this. We will have the draft plan available for review on that site later this spring. I don't know the exact date yet. We're still working on writing things and finishing the analysis and such, but it will be there for your review and reference and use later down the line. Anything else?
You can leave comments on that website as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, and you all have flyers sitting in front of you that are like a little handout about the plan. And for the folks that are online, if you want access to these, I think Kip has a big stack of them somewhere. Will they be at the front desk at WFRC if they want to come by? They're by the sandwiches. But if people come by later, are they going to be by the sandwiches or are they going to be up front?
They'll be up front where
Okay.
people can find them. And I think Rosie's putting that link in the chat box as well.
Okay, awesome.
And
Well,
we'll also share that in the email.
Okay, great. Thank you all for your time. It was a great conversation with you all, and I appreciate the chance to talk.
Thank you so much. Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to move to one of our last ones. So we're just going to move to open discussions and announcements. So this is time for if you have any upcoming events. I'm going to share 2 items and then I'll open the floor to all of you and those online. So we have a new member orientation, February 22nd from 1:30 to 3 p.m. and that will be at this office. So you'll be seeing an invite for that and we'll share more information kind of for what that is. And if you'd like to join, you are being invited to that. So I just wanted to let you know what that was before you got an email. And then there's also a Utah Community Needs Assessment that we were emailed to share. And so that we will share that with you in our follow-up email. So look for that link. And if it applies to you, please take some time to fill it out. But if anyone else has any other upcoming events, announcements, now's the time to share.
Yes, the Utah Transit Riders Union is currently starting the 7-day challenge. So we are asking people to take transit for 7 days and participate in the challenge. So if you go to our website, utru.org, utru.org/treat, that's short for Transit Everywhere All the Time, TREATT. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can participate in the 7-day challenge. Sign up. We will help you with transit training and all of that sort of stuff. But we want to encourage people to sign up. We'll be doing it in May of this year.
Wonderful. That's really cool. Any other items?
Yeah, happy Black History Month. University of Utah has a lot of Black History Month events. We are inviting you to attend any and or all of them. You can find all of our events at diversity.utah.edu/events. And there's like a whole calendar.
Wonderful. Any other items? Anyone online?
I have one, Lauren. So I know you all are already on a community advisory committee, but UTA is seeking members for our UTA Community Advisory Committee. It's more transit focused than this committee. So if you want to check it out, if you want to refer people to us, we do have an open call right now on our website. It's rideuta.com/CAC.
Okay. Last call. Any other items, comments, questions? Great. Well, thanks. Thanks everyone for coming.